afternoon, everyone. So now I'm here at the rooftop. So this is fourth floor of the Agana's residence. So I'm actually staying with my wife's residence. The family name is Agana. So I'm here at the fourth floor. So if this is Zamboanga City, the background, this is actually the north, no? Towards my background would be going north. That's Abong-Abong, and then this is west, going to Calarian, going to the west part of the city, and then this one is east, going to Bualan, right? So I'm just giving you the more or less an idea of where I'm sitting. So this is the rooftop, and the reason why I opted to continue vlogging here because of the noise. It's really very difficult to vlog in the restaurant. So I was coming from, I came from La Casa Maria. So since it was quite not conducive for vlogging, so I opted to vlog here. So hoping that the neighbors won't be creating unnecessary noise, no? But in fact they are already some are singing, but hopefully this won't be captured in my vlog. So let me start by the vivid description of the Flora and Fauna of the book entitled The Plains of Passage. So if you will read this book, it's like watching the National Geographic channel, where the wild is really clearly described through the imagery. It's like when you're reading this, exactly like you're watching National Geographic channel. For example, you're in Africa with different tribes, with the flora and fauna, the animals, the plants, no, the ethnic tribes. Exactly the same imagery that is being projected by the author Auel. In fact, she's a woman author, and I presume that she immersed in the community. I think she really immersed in the why. Why? Because she really is well versed about the details. No, every detail to capture that imagery that she wants the reader to capture. And so, while I'm reading this, I got a feeling that perhaps she has immersed in the wild, for her to be able to really find the nitty-gritty stuff about the animals, the nuances, no, of the place, the habitat, and of course the animals. For example, the wolves. She's practically aware of the behavior of the animals. For example, the wolves, because the protagonist here, we will start with the protagonist, with the characterization. We'll start with Isla. Isla is a protagonist whose mystery, in fact, was already established in the early goings, or in the initial chapters of the novel. She's possessing this sort of a spiritual, not necessarily power, but it's more of her ability or spiritual connection with the wild, with the flora and fauna, especially the animals. In fact, she has a friend, a wolf, whom she's able to speak with. No, she's able to communicate with the animals, especially with the wolf. It's like watching a female Tarzan. So she's well versed with the languages. No, sometimes she's able to communicate with other different tribes. There are two major tribes that I would want to mention. There are several tribes, but one tribe would be the Mamutai tribe, where Isla was raised. Her birth wasn't really mentioned in the initial chapters. That's the mystery. Where she came from was a mystery, but she was, I think, raised in Mamutai. Well, it was mentioned, but in terms of the birth, you know, that's where she came from. That's a mystery. And then her mate, who was also a protagonist, Jandolar was belonging to the tribe Zelandoni. So these are the two major tribes that we're talking about, with different languages. But then you would see how that each tribe would have different culture, different languages. And so some tribes would be kind, some tribes would have different behavior, some tribes are hostile towards other tribes. And so that is where the action and the suspense would come in, you know, where one, for example, tribesmen or tribesman, for example, or a member of a tribe would deal with other ethnic tribes. So, for example, in the case of Isla, she's always a mystery to other people, other tribal people, because she's able to communicate with animals. Well, the reason for that is she was trained by the Mamuntai tribe to maybe converse with animals. Especially her mentors, her teachers were also always living with the spirit. So all throughout this journey, there's this Mother Earth. No, Mother Earth is supposed to be the highest spiritual being. So if you notice that it's Mother Earth, it's the image of a woman that is being projected. And the reason for that, maybe it's because the writer is a woman. So she is in fact emphasizing motherhood. So many times that in this novel, motherhood was mentioned. So now in terms of conflict, when you read a novel, you always look for a conflict. So what's the conflict? So you always have to try to find out for the conflict. Initially, I think what was bothering her was about having a child. So knowing that, as I said earlier, John Dalar was her mate. And so through her journey along with John Dalar, of course from their first meeting and all, they somewhat they developed that love for each other, and so they considered each other mates already. And so in this novel, really the sexual intimacy is really very descriptive, but it is not like you're reading pornographic material. It's not. It's like when you read this, whenever they're experiencing that love making, it's more of two natural beings being blessed by Mother Earth to commune, to be together and experience that beauty of sexual intimacy. And it's like, you know, watching two human beings share the love and beauty of nature. And I think that is the feeling. And above all, there is blessing from Mother Earth. Whenever they're doing it, whenever they're experiencing that love, sexual intimacy, it's more like they are being blessed to share that love and hopefully to procreate. Now, the conflict was, okay, so since they're having this sexual intimacy, there's that question about having a child. Perhaps I was thinking maybe it's because of her past. That's the mystery. She's always thinking whether is it right to have a child. Same thing with John Dalar. He was also asking himself whether is it right to have a child with Isla, knowing that he has also his past. He has also his previous mates in the past. And so he was hesitant to talk about having a child with Isla. But it's more of just they're experiencing the blissful moments, but they are not in fact really considering having a child. So in fact, in the internal rehearsal that they're having, thinking about having a child, I think I was sensing, being a reader, that there's a problem. But in fact, as you go along, maybe there's the having a child, being a mother, you know, motherhood and having children, I think is intertwined in the complexity, in the intricacies of the novel as you go along. So I was thinking, okay, so maybe this is part of the conflict. So then I continued reading. So that part is not anymore mentioned about having a child, but they continued on traveling. They traveled so many places, no, so many habitat. No, they have traveled different settings. No? For example, they met animals. No? They met falls, waterfalls. So in terms of way of life, page by page, very vivid description of what they're eating, for example, what they do for hunting, what they eat, what they wear, everything. It's all well described. So in terms of sensory words, you can really feel the wild, you can really feel the forests, you can really feel the roaring of the lion, the roaring of the wolves. So you can really feel the intensity of how it is to be in the wild. Again, when I read novels, I always look for, okay, so what now? So what's the conflict? So then, in one instance, there was they were caught in the middle of tribes people hunting horses, and so since they were riding horses, they were torn in the middle, and so they got separated. And so because of that incident, that led Jondalar to another dangerous tribe, and that dangerous tribe actually captured those who were the men hunters who were hunting horses. And so they were drawn, they were captured to that dangerous tribe whose leader was Tarawa. So Tarawa was like, if you're reading Greek literature, she's like the Amazon. She dislikes men as leaders because she wants to be the leader. And so they were incarcerated. Jondalar was incarcerated while Isla managed to go home. And so what happened was they were captured, and that through that incident, they were incarcerated. Men were imprisoned, and so during the exchanges, they were discussing about, those who were in prison. One is Jondalar, and the other tribal people from different tribes. They were talking about who is this Tarawa. So in the conversation, Tarawa was really the main focus in their conversation. So who is this Tarawa? One image of Tarawa is that she is really an angry, furious type of leader towards men. She dislikes men. She punishes men. She even kills men who does not follow her. So in their tribe, they limit the number of males as servants. The rulers are females. There you would see the power of a woman author creating this characterization that would be empowered, no? That would empower women. That would empower women. And so now, how do they communicate? Since this dangerous tribe, Tarawa's tribe, is a different tribe, so how do they communicate with each other? So in the case of Jondalar, since he's a Zelandoni, there was this woman shaman who was a healer, who was also a woman leader, head woman in that place, in that tribe of Tarawa, who was translating. Now, as a linguist, this is what I want to critique. So in page 536, there's this interaction where it's like when you read the lines, it's like they're really talking. But how is it possible that the lines are like they're talking and yet they are only being translated? So the nuances of the facial expression and all are actually captured in dialogue. That's a question. How real would be the discourse if the conversation in fact was only translated? There's a medium, a translator, who is revealing the message. So how come the dialogues would be like a real dialogue between two people understanding one language? So different language, translator, they're using translator, and yet the dialogue is like they're using one language. So that's my critique. It's like too good to be true. In joking, for example, sarcasm. How do you bring about sarcasm in translation? Okay, now honoring the tribe. So the point of conversation was, it's really the the stereotyping. So really, the Tarawa was pushing for stereotyping that she really pushed for a leader who is a woman. She disapproves, she disagrees with co-leadership, because in the conversation, John Dalar was telling her, okay, if you want to lead, why not have co-leaders, right? Why in my tribe, for example, according to John Dalar, my mother was also a leader who became a leader, yet she has a mate, she has a husband. She does not hurt, nor she does not hurt or kill co-leaders or men, but in fact they reign together. That is what Tarawa's Tarawa was trying to argue about, because she disapproves sharing her power, and there's a reason for that. She wouldn't want to share her power because she's coming from a very painful past. In the past, she was hurt by Bruger. Bruger was someone who actually was the one who welcomed her in the tribe, and then in fact exploited her. But at this point, still the mystery of Tarawa, where she came from, her origin, wasn't yet being discussed during that conversation between John Dalar. So question now is, as a reader, you might want to think, okay, will he still survive? Because normally Tarawa's trademark as a leader is that whenever you're caught, you will be used, sexually used. So Tarawa was kind of aggressive as a woman. She makes use of men sexually, and then after that she would kill them. She would have that satisfaction of, after sexually harassing them, then after that she would have that feeling of satisfaction when she inflicts pain on them. So that is the previous conversation. That was the previous conversation amongst other tribes who were incarcerated. Now during this point, as a reader, I was thinking, okay, so will he also be killed? So that's the point of turning the page. You want to know what will happen to John Dalar. So will he be killed? So, but then Isla came. No, Isla, since Isla was familiar with reading the environment, smelling. She was familiar with the blood stains and all. She followed the blood stain of John Dalar. So that's how she was able to find John Dalar's whereabouts. So in short, Isla came, and then when Isla came, it's like Tarawa was mesmerized by Isla's presence. It's like she has this spiritual aura that no one can resist. So Isla, in her conversation about Mother Earth and all, talked about the virtues of Mother Earth, that she's not supposed to hurt people, children, and men. And even with the conversation with the translator sa Samunay, then she was able to convince Tarawa that they just be released. But then before they were released, Samunay invited them over feasts if they will be coming back. And so that's the story. So I thought, okay, so I was hoping that there will be fighting, but then there was no fight. So that is the mystery. Why is it Tarawa's reaction towards Isla was like she was mesmerized by her presence? She is able to talk with them using their language. She is able to deal with them well, and she really moves well. She's a warrior also. She moves like them as an Amazon. And so they went home, and then there's again the experience, the blissful experience of sexual intimacy between Isla and Jondalar. So it's really that blissful moments when they're mating. Then after that, they thought, we need to go back. So when they went home, after spending time, with each other, they thought, we cannot just leave the children and the men, the poor men who are sick in prison, who will be left dying. And so they decided to return. So that is where the suspense would be coming out now. Because, as a reader, you might think, okay, so since they will be returning, that's the time there will be confrontation. So, but then, there was a bit of several pages given in the novel where when they returned, Tarawa welcomed them in her place, to stay in her place, but Shamunay, who was previously a Zelandoni, fellow tribeswoman of Jondalar, invited them in her place. So that is where they talked about a lot of things. So they discovered about a lot of things that Sarmunay was in fact a close friend of the mother of Jondalar, and so she was really concerned about their history and all. And so the two, Isla and Jondalar's suspicion that there's a reason why Sarmunay told them to return. Maybe she is not on the side of Tarawa. Maybe she's sending them a message that she would want to help them. In fact, the role of Sarmunay was not only a translator. She was also a healer. Shaman is a healer, other than a translator. Wise woman, at the same time a healer. And so with the presence of Sarmunay, they also came to know about the origin of Tarawa. Who is this female leader, Amazon, who is very powerful now? So in their conversation, she came from a humble beginning, and then she wasn't really that powerful, and then she mated with a leader, Bruger. So Bruger was then the leader of this current tribe of Tarawa. But the problem with Bruger is that he is a psychopath. No? Psychologically, he has a problem. He is a psychopath where he has this tendency to have satisfaction during sexual intimacy by inflicting pain on his partner. See? So every time they have sexual intimacy, he would hurt Tarawa. In fact, even when she was pregnant, so in their conversation, even when she was pregnant, she's still being hurt. She's still being hurt by Bruger. And so with that painful experience, that led her to have remorse, no? To have ill feelings towards men. And so she decided to be the ruler. But of course, in this chapter, it wasn't made sure of what happened to Bruger. But there's a mystery brewing in this chapter where they were talking about the genderless child. So they had a child. Remember, she was being hurt while she was pregnant. And so I was asking in the previous pages, who is this child? Did they have a child? And so in this page, it was revealed that they were hiding this child. And so if they hid this child, it's also possible that something went wrong with the child. And so it wasn't sure. They gave a name to this child, but then they don't reveal the gender of the child. And so my notion is I would want to stop here, then later I'll continue. The prediction is this is a good technique used by the author in terms of mystery. Why? Because so who is this child? That's a question. Who is this child? And then connecting this with Isla, in the initial chapter, Isla was an orphan. I was predicting, could it be possible that this mysterious child that they don't show to the people, that they don't know the gender, was in fact the orphan in the initial chapter, in the person of Isla. See? Now, that is the prediction. In my next part 2, the part 2 of this vlog, we will in fact verify if my prediction is correct or not. But it's also possible that I'm incorrect in terms of prediction. That's why it's a prediction. Okay, so thank you for tuning into my vlog. So please wait for my part 2. Okay? So bye. See you later.